Star now Pettersson the blast. Oh, that hit Provorov. Diving save. Hart as he flashes across. Briere sets up Carl. Side of the net. Deflected. Score! Briere moving in. Stops. Cuts to the middle. Still has it. Shot! Score! Here's Hughes giving it across. Oh, what a save! Dave Blackmore! 2 on 1. Got it to him. He's in angle. Short-handed mid. Up top, cruising is Provorov. He scores! Ivan Provorov!
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Flyered Up Podcast. I'm your host, Amadeo Grassi, along by Chris Mayer, as always, also Tyson Quibel from The Painted Lines. We are live streaming on The Painted Lines, TTP Sports, and Flyers Fan Media 93 on YouTube. And for people who haven't been able to tune into the live streams, they will always be on your typical podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast at. Welcome back to the Flyered Up Podcast. We're getting really close to hockey, really, really close to hockey. We all hope you had an amazing Christmas. And let's get into the business. Flyers schedule was released a couple of days ago. We're going to be breaking that down. The World Juniors are currently underway. And there has been a lot of lopsided scores in there, but we'll talk about some Flyers prospects that are lighting up the lamp during those times. And a lot of news going on with signings, some players that have to step down and not be able to play. We're going to get into all of that. So, Chris, Tyson, how are you all feeling getting closer to the NHL season? Tyson, we'll start with you since you were not on last week's show.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think that any hockey is better than no hockey, even if it's a 56-game schedule. So I think the World Juniors is kind of scratching that itch for me the last few days. But I'm just ready for there to be some NHL hockey again. I'm glad that it hasn't been pushed off even more so as was rumored, and that pretty quickly here we're going to actually have some games here. It seems like divisions are finalized. Seems like players are getting PTOs and signing, and it just looks like a exciting time for any hockey fan right now.
And Chris, we're getting closer to the season. I already know you're pumped. I can see you're copying me and wearing the reverse retro jersey right there. Yeah. So, what's the mood? How are you feeling?
I feel great, man. It makes me think too. Like, I feel like for the longest time we were just waiting, and now finally, we have something. We actually know the day of most of the games. We just don't know we know the time for the first game, but we don't know the other 55. But overall, I think it's going to be a good season. I do. I have high hopes for the Flyers this year. It's going to be a tough division. We talked about it before. It's probably the hardest division out of the 4. So again, I think it's going to be a good year. Again, I agree with Tyson. I think the World Juniors have been great. I think they've done a lot with that. I think everything of just them being in a bubble. To me, I think it's really similar to the playoffs. I think they did a great job with just, with the production on TV and things like that. So overall, it's been scratching that itch too. I agree with Tyson there. And again, I think it's cool that we have some hockey back and at least the days for some of these games coming up.
Yeah, we're just looking at the schedule right now. The Flyers, they're going to be the very first game on January 13th against the Pittsburgh Penguins at 5:30. That, to me, when I just see 5:30, I just like, oh man, it's an odd time. But it's just like, hey, majority of the people are going to be home. They're going to be home at their TV watching the game. So honestly, the time doesn't really matter at that point. We got Flyers hockey. That's the only thing that matters. And we're getting some comments right here saying that there's no sound right here from Sean. I'm not sure what is going on right there. So maybe that's something to do with the live stream. I mean, I can hear us good right here. I'm not sure if that's something that's wrong with YouTube, but so I guess we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Can you guys still hear us? Because I'm not sure what's the problem. Okay, Sean says it's on now. Thank you for pointing that out, Sean. Okay, so yeah, a little bit of YouTube malfunction, I would just assume right there. So going back to the schedule, like I said, Flyers, January 13th, Pittsburgh Penguins, 5:30 on NBC. It's going to be an amazing game. And just looking at the schedule entirely, since it's going to be against all one division, all the games are basically, from what it looks like, it's going to be just to limit the travels. You'll be seeing a lot of teams being played at least twice in a row. And that's the way it's going to start off with the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Flyers will play them the first 2 games of the season. And that's going to be the way it shapes up the entire season. So it limits travel. And honestly, this could be maybe something that benefits a lot of the teams. It's a lot more rest. You don't have to worry about traveling back and forth to so many places. And honestly, I can understand why there would be so many back-to-backs because there's not that much travel. So just looking at this first game in matchups against the Pittsburgh Penguins, just the Flyers are the first game. I think Tampa Bay and Chicago, they are the second game. Who's the third game? I think it's Colorado, but who else?
Colorado and St. Louis.
Colorado and St. Louis. So those are going to be the first 3 games to start off the NHL season. And just looking at this first game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, I feel like that's probably the perfect game you have to start out an NHL season by far. Rivalry, the Battle of Pennsylvania. Guys, I want to hear your thoughts on the Flyers being the first team to be played during the shortened 2021 season. So, Chris, I want to start with your thoughts on the Flyers being the first team to be playing.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think it's awesome. I think it's cool to see the Flyers get, recognition like that and to be able to play that first game. I think overall, I think there's actually 5 games on that day. I think the other 2 are in the Canadian or the North Division, I should say. But overall, I think what they try to do is do like rivalry games that day. So I think it makes sense. I honestly think the 2 teams Flyers probably could have played were either the Pens or the Bruins. Could have maybe seen the Rangers. But again, I think it makes sense for them to start off against Pittsburgh overall, and I think it's going to be a great game. Honestly, I think it's going to be a good series too. The one thing I will say about most of the schedule in a whole, I really like that there's the Flyers only have 8 back-to-backs through the course of the year, and they have a lot of days in between games. I think their longest stretch in between games where they have like a break, I believe it's like 3 or 4 days. It's not too far, so it's not like an insanely long break like we've seen, like maybe like with that Christmas break where it's like a 5-day break. Where last year they played the 23rd and then play again until the 28th, something like that. But overall, I think it's a good schedule. I'm excited for that first game and that first series versus Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Tyson, just going to those first series of games right there. I see that your Toronto Maple Leafs, I forgot them for a second. They're reopening up against the Montreal Canadiens. Just like looking at all these games that are just starting on January 13th, a bunch of these rivalry games. We also have the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers. Like, just get your thoughts on, okay, we finally have a schedule. We have the dates confirmed. Like, what are your thoughts and excitement just going into that first day right there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm excited for there to be the potential for there actually being kind of some old school rivalries to build up again. I think a lot of what they've done in the new scheduling over the past few years in particular was they moved away from, more division. Obviously, it's a lot easier now. It seems, well, I should say now, not with the COVID-19, but before COVID-19, a big difference, a lot easier to travel for games. It was even in the 90s. Sometimes you would have teams that actually wouldn't have their own plane, so they'd fly on regular airplanes. In some instances in the NHL in the late 90s. So to have this ability now to have every team be able to travel as they are able, it's kind of in some ways almost watered down, especially with 31 teams. The ability to build a past rivalry. So the Red Wings, for example, Red Wings Avalanche of the late 90s, early 2000s was just an epic rivalry. And so now we've seen the past couple of years, for example, in what will be the North Division, Calgary and Edmonton, they hate each other. Battle of Alberta, probably more than 82 teams in the league. They'll play each other, I believe it is 10 times this year.
It is 10 times, yeah.
Yeah, so let's just say we're gonna have line brawls, and I don't know, 8 of them. I have no idea, but that
would be fantastic.
If we're going by percentage,
goalie fight every night.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe we're gonna. I mean, teams are gonna carry 4 goalies, I think, or 3 or 4. So I mean, they can rotate them in.
It's 3.
3?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's gonna be fun, but I think I'm excited for that. For some of those old rivalries where you're just kind of like, that used to be a thing. Like even the Montreal, Ottawa ones. Like other than Toronto, the other 2 haven't really been playoff teams for a while, for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So as someone like me who grew up in, watching hockey 90s, early 2000s religiously, the Senators was always a huge rivalry. The Canadians always were. We were always kind of in the playoffs and beating the junk out of each other. And now it's kind of like, well, who are our rivals really? Like, what are heated games that I really want to watch? So now those are kind of happening with more regularity. I mean, it's kind of like the Battle of Pennsylvania. You want to see the Battle of Pennsylvania quite a bit. Maybe even the Rangers, past rivalries that maybe have kind of taken a back seat, I think we're going to see come to the forefront, and that makes me extremely excited. And I think too, it's huge that the Flyers are getting that first night on NBC Sports Network. I mean, I was reading that Dallas only has one nationally televised game on NBC Sports Network this whole next season, and they were in the Cup Finals, so they're very picky.
Flyers are on there 7 times.
Yeah,
so Flyers have 7 national games.
That's telling because they're recognizing the draw of them.
Yeah, and last year they had 20. And it makes sense too. I mean, they're owned by Comcast, so obviously they're going to be getting some games. But still, I mean, there's still a definitely a TV market with, I mean, I feel like most of the games, it's kind of always the same teams. Like you always have obviously the Flyers, Penguins, Rangers, Bruins, Chicago, Detroit. I mean, they've kind of shifted more towards obviously Colorado usually gets that late game, but I mean, most of them are kind of the same. But again, I mean, really, I think it's all the games. And I think the one thing that kind of does stink is that, like you always get like that one game that's the outdoor game, like the Stadium Series. You always have that like kind of like good matchup because it's an outdoor game, like last year with Colorado and LA. That's kind of something that's like that looks like a good game on the schedule because it is outdoors too. So I think that does add the element. But I would hope that they can do the outdoor games, because I know that was kind of brought up a little bit ago that there were still some teams that were kind of like, I guess kind of just like tinkering with that idea. But overall, I agree with Tyson there too.
Yeah, just looking at the schedule in general, just the amount of rivalries this is going to produce just this entire season, teams playing within their own division. For the Flyers standpoint, they have so many rivals on the Eastern Coast, the main being the Pittsburgh Penguins. You got the New York Rangers, you got the Devils, you got the Washington Capitals, you got the Boston Bruins. Those are probably some of the main rivals for the Flyers right there. And they're going to be facing those guys the entire season, at least 8 or 9 times. Yeah, that's going to be fantastic to watch. And just looking at the first month of the season right here, they opened the first 4 games at home. Their first 2 games of the season are against the Pittsburgh Penguins on January 13th and the 15th. Then a back-to-back on the 18th and the 19th between the Buffalo Sabres. Then the Flyers will go on the road for 4 straight games. On January 21st, they'll play and the 23rd, they'll be playing the Boston Bruins. On the 26th and the 28th, they'll be playing the New Jersey Devils. And then the final 2 days of the month of January, the 30th and the 31st, they will be playing the New York Islanders. So that's a tough month to start off right there. You got Pittsburgh, Boston, Islanders, Buffalo. That's a really tough month right there to start off.
Yeah.
And just looking at all these games, how is it, the one thing that's always like dwelling in my mind right here is just that since you're be playing games like teams back to back majority of the time, it kind of reminds me of like something what the AHL does when sometimes they do like their home stretches where they play maybe a team the same time, maybe during a weekend. Like maybe this is like different type of ground for some of these teams. Okay. Maybe if this was a regular season, we maybe play this team one time, then we don't see them maybe for like another like 2-3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks if we get lucky. Now we're seeing these same teams on back-to-back games. Does that make preparing for the games easier, or does that make, I guess, adjusting or maybe a little bit harder? Like, what does that make it right there? Like, Tyson, like, what do you think of that right there? On like how the teams are going to be preparing for these games now, knowing that it's against division foes?
Yeah, I think it is going to be a tough adjustment. And I say that because, depending on coaches, but most of the time, let's just take goaltending, for example. In today's NHL, it's very rare the goalies play back-to-backs. Now, maybe with the breaks, that will be the case this year. I would think if I was a team, say like the Flyers with Carter Hart in particular, like in a 56-game season, you're going to want him to play probably at least 30 to 35 at minimum. And so in a back-to-back, like they're going to have to ask questions and personnel and things like that. There's going to be a lot of that going on. But yeah, I mean, I think it is going to be a little bit harder to prepare, like especially if you're saying like let's just say you get blown out in the first day, and then the second day you're coming back and playing the same team. It's just going to be both hard on morale and also hard on personnel. So I think we're going to see some interesting sort of things take place. I also think we're going to see actually a lot higher scoring sort of deal going on, especially with no preseason. Like if you watch the first week of the season, most years, it's amazing to see how many goals go in. Like you'll see some 6-4 games the first week until teams kind of settle into their systems. That's with exhibition. We got nothing. They're just going to jump right in and it's just going to be mayhem, and I'm all here for it. I rule for chaos or root for chaos when it comes to these sort of things. So as much as I think it's going to be hard, I'm looking forward to it. And with these taxi squads, and they've talked about how they're going to have to do all these transactions all the time to kind of move guys around. You're going to see a record number of like player movement between rosters and things like that, like being called up and off and things like that for cap purposes. You could totally see, I think, even an entire fourth line change over the course of a game. So you could see a team like the Islanders maybe like have a pretty tough fourth line one game, and then Barry Trotz get mad and then flip an entire new fourth line in for the next. So we're going to see a lot more, I think, personnel options for coaches and a lot more tinkering. It should be fun. A lot of mayhem.
Yeah, and Chris, just like going basically off that same question for Tyson, like how do you think teams are going to adjust now, knowing that they're going to be playing the same team multiple times in a row?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like a lot of it is going to carry over. I mean, I noticed in some of these World Junior games, there's been stuff that's kind of carried over and things like that with these teams. And I feel like when you play the same team so many times, say, for example, if there's just like a late hit or something, or, teams remember that stuff. So that's going to carry over. I thought there's going to be a lot of, honestly, and Tyson, kind of go off your point with that too. That's one thing I wanted to bring up was the goaltending point. It makes me think how they do that with the Flyers, because I honestly could see them doing it where Moose and Brian Elliott, I kind of feel like he's going to get I honestly could see them probably getting around similar, games, to be honest, because I mean, I feel like you kind of want to keep Hart fresh at the same time. But then again, it kind of puts that thought in the back of your mind. Could Lyon outplay Elliott and training camp? I mean, it's probably unlikely, but it not that like it can't happen. Overall, I feel like it's kind of tough to kind of, I guess, break it down like from an instance as of right now. But overall, I mean, I feel like the taxi squad also helps too, because again, if you have guys that are injured and things like that, you can just kind of, insert them into the lineup. Overall, I feel like, preparing for the games might be a little bit easier on the coach's side, because again, we see this team X amount of times. You kind of get a feeling of how they play, and late into those months, maybe like February, March, and April, is when you really start to, get like that feel. And I know I just said those 3 months, which are literally one of them is the second month of the season, because I'm so used to saying the other months that are late into the year in a normal year. But usually probably like, March, April is probably when you're going to be getting most of those teams, starting to get like that feel for how these teams play and things like that, and kind of their style and all that stuff. But overall, I mean, I honestly think the Flyers have a good, I feel like they have a very good, just overall, schedule to look at, because I feel like most of these games, it kind of puts them in a good spot. As I talked about with the with only having 8 back-to-backs. Last year they had 16. So that's already half off from there. And things like that. So overall, I think it's going to be a solid year for them. I'm hoping they kind of, take it with ease and try to, enjoy it at the same time, because again, I think it's tough with everything going on, playing the same teams all the time might get boring. From a standpoint, if you kind of play the same team a lot, it might just be like, I feel like it's going to be weird playoff wise, because it's like, you're going to have all division play until the conference finals. And that's going to be weird once that, those two teams in the cup final meet each other, because that is probably going to be the first time that they meet each other all year. So it really makes you think how that's going to play out too.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely going to be looked at. It's just because you're playing your division so many times in one season, that's going to make the playoffs, like going into the conference final and the Stanley Cup final, just like even, I guess, more meaningful, because, okay, this is the first time we're playing these guys the entire season. We got to play our asses off, and we got to prepare like mentally, because who knows what they're going to throw at the table. And we have something in the comment section right here, a question from Sean asking, do you think because of the more rivalry games that the Flyers may have to add a little more physicality in case the rough stuff has to ensue? I mean, if you're going in the sense of rivalry games, yes, there's going to be a lot of physicality, because the more times you play teams in a season, the more you're going to despise them. That's just the thing you're getting right there. Then Sean also ensues after that comment, sign Matt Martin. Who knows? Who knows if that happens? I personally don't see it happening, but like, it's just going off that point. The more you get into the season, the more physical these games are going to get because these teams are just not going to like each other. They're going to be tired of playing each other. It's going to be one of those types of situations.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, go ahead, Tyson.
I was just going to say, I think the other thing to take into consideration too is if you're the Flyers last year, your success was built on, your 4 lines of constant puck possession and the ability to have guys on the 4th line that maybe would be physical. Like I think of Nick Kubel, right? Like he can play physical. He's not afraid to, really tenacious, good on the forecheck. He's going to hit you, but he's not necessarily going to drop the gloves and do any of those sort of things. But in terms of his on-ice contribution, he has an amazing on-ice contribution overall, considering for a 4th line guy that will be likely in that same role again or possibly out of the lineup. So, I mean, there's a chance that if they maybe say they're playing the Pens in the back-to-back and the first day they feel like they get run over, maybe they throw somebody else in. Maybe I was just looking at their depth chart. They don't have a lot there, but they have a lot of guys that are, when it comes to physicality, but they do have a good amount of guys that are big, strong, aren't afraid to play that style of play. Won't necessarily drop them, but I don't think that's the type of style that the Flyers are going to be looking to play, to be honest with you. I think that was kind of the old school Broad Street Bullies that everybody loved, 70s, 80s, late 60s, maybe occasionally in the 90s, but I think we're going to see this more high puck possession game. I mean, I think Farabee's right now I have Farabee probably likely to start the season as a 4th line left winger, if they go with some of the lines of last year, behind Giroux, Lindbaum, and JVR. Maybe him and JVR could switch. I don't know. But if you think about that, there's not room for someone like a Matt Martin right there in a lineup, say, on the left side, which is what Martin has historically played, is on the left side. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're looking at it at just a Matt Martin standpoint, I don't really think it fits either. I mean, cap space, they only have 2.2, and Martin got paid 2.5 last year. So I'm really not too sure how that would work unless he would take a pay cut. Obviously, the Islanders still have to sign Barzal and things like that, but I talked about it in the last episode too. It's been rumored that they already, gave offers to guys to like Corey Schneider, Andy Green, and Matt Martin, but they just haven't been announced. Like everything's gone through, but it just hasn't been announced yet because they obviously have to sign, their star player in Matt Barzal. But honestly, I feel like the Flyers don't necessarily have to be that tough, gritty team. I mean, I think they're one of the best cycle teams in the NHL, to be honest with you. And once they get going, they have guys that are, relatively small that can, that I shouldn't say small, but they're just not known for their physicality. Like they're smaller. Like Drew, for example, he's 5'11", but Drew can bang at times. I feel like guys like Couturier, Voracek's great with the puck. Kevin Hayes is huge. I feel like there's a lot of guys that can just, cycle the puck well. I mean, guys like Lawton, Raffle, Albie, Kubel. I mean, and then those are a couple guys that Tyson mentioned too. I feel like overall they don't.
Even guys like Connecting can throw the body.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't necessarily think they have to be at this big, broad, Broad Street Bullies team like they've been historically. But overall, I feel like they did get manhandled against the Islanders. I mean, they could not physically handle Brock Nelson and Anders Lee, and was it concerning at that time? Yeah, but it was a completely different team from what we saw in the regular season and the playoffs. So that's another thing you got to look at it too. It's like you can't base everything off the playoffs. You kind of have to base it off the regular season too. And I think overall, I don't necessarily think the roster needs anything added to it right now. I think they're set with that roster. I think that's what they're going to go in with. And I honestly, I mean, I look at this Flyers team and honestly, not just this year, for years to come, if they lose somebody, I look at some of these prospects of guys that it's just like, okay, this guy can come in and fill it. Like for example, a guy like Scott Lawton, honestly, a guy like Tanner Laczynski could come in and fill that role. They have so many guys now in the system that are blooming into NHL players, and they have a lot of guys that can make it this year. There's guys that can make it down the road, call-ups, things like that. So overall, I don't think they have to add much. I mean, they don't really have the cap to sign anybody, and just because they have the cap space doesn't mean they're going to use it. So I think overall, I think it makes sense for them to, stick with the roster they have now, and I think that's probably what they're going to do for the beginning of the season.
Yeah, just looking at the rest of the other parts of the schedule, we're going into February right now. So instead of just to save some time right here, I'm not going to say the specific dates. I'm just going to be saying who they're playing at the times. So to start off February, they'll be playing twice against the Boston Bruins. Then they'll go on the road to play the Capitals 2 times, come back home, they'll play the Devils 2 times. And then in a stretch of 3 games in 4 3 and 4 games, they'll be playing the New York Rangers, and then in between that, they'll be playing the Boston Bruins, and then to close out the month of February, they'll be playing Buffalo twice, and then going into March, that adds on to the 5-game road stretch between Pittsburgh and then 1 game in Boston. So it's just you play the Rangers for the first time in February. The Rangers are going to be a much difficult team to play this year. They're very young. They're very talented, and they're going to have a lot of things to prove. Honestly, like we said in our last podcast, this division, it's going to be the toughest division to play to even make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Every team you can argue is a playoff contender. Honestly, besides maybe you can argue Buffalo, I would not say you can argue the Devils.
Yeah,
every team probably the Devils.
I mean, I think the Devils will be better. I think they'll probably give some teams a hard time, but I think if this was 2-3 years down the road, I'd say, okay, maybe all teams, obviously this will be completely different because, they're already looking at, a fresh new season next year. But overall, if this right now was 2-3 years down the road for New Jersey, I think they'd probably be in a better spot. But just to go off your point, I personally think Buffalo can battle. I just don't know because the last 2 years, they've been a team that's like, they're streaky. Like, I believe it was 18-19. They were phenomenal. Like they were in the beginning, top of the Atlantic, and then they completely fell off. Like they just went right down. Like
didn't they have like a 10-game winning streak or something like that? Yeah. And then they just ended up missing the playoffs. They pulled the Flyers in
they had a
17.
They had a 10-game win streak in December, and they were, I believe, at the end of that month, they were the best team by like 4. I think it was either 4 points or like 3 games. It was like 4, like 6 points, whatever, like ahead in first place. So they had a decent advantage, and then they just completely fell off from there.
Yeah, I do think they're going to. Yeah, I think they are going to be better this year. I think now I think they could maybe even surpass the Bruins, which might sound weird, but Bruins just lost 2 of their top 4 defensemen from last year, and haven't replaced them internally or externally. And that was an issue for them last year at moments was their blue line depth. And so you have a Sabres team that now they have, obviously everyone knows Jack Eichel. And so he drives the line on his own, adding Taylor Hall. Now you got a second line with another player that can drive on his own, whether he plays with Eichel or not. I think they're probably likely to separate him. And then you add to the mix Dylan Cousins, who we've seen play for Canada at the World Juniors, who's 19, 6'4" center, can also play on the right wing. He can likely match up with one of those guys. I think he's at 9 points now in 3 games in the World Juniors and was expected to make the Bruins this year anyway, Sabres this year anyway. I think that they're going to be a little bit better, plus Dahlin a year older. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see that division because I think we're going to see a few changes there. I think the Capitals will probably be what they have been, right? And I think the Bruins are worse. I think the Flyers will probably remain roughly in that same sort of area they were last year. I think the Rangers and Sabres will take a step forward, at least in terms of talent they have. But again, coming out of that division, it's going to be a tough division. The more I think about it.
Just to add off your point there with Buffalo, they did add Eric Stahl too.
They did.
So they do have another center depth and some more leadership in the locker room too, because that was one of the key things that they missed when they traded away Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah, now just at that top 6 for Buffalo, that's something right there because you have your first line. You have a guy like Jack Eichel. He's going to drive the play. You got another year under of Olofsson, and then you also have Eric Stahl. You added Taylor Hall, and it's something to work around right there. Yeah. Their defense is still very young. You got Ristolainen, you got Dahlin. Their goaltending to me is probably maybe a little bit of their flaws right there. Yeah. They still have Ullmark. They still have Hutton. I think Ullmark's probably going to be the guy going forward, and it's still like a question mark situation right there.
Yeah, I feel like they are trending in the right direction, though. I will say, I think it's just a matter of time where they might need that key piece, either on the back end or in the net. But honestly, I'm not too sure. Honestly, I look at a team like Boston. Yes, they're young, and yes, they did lose a lot in the offseason in losing Krug and Chara. Which is insane that Chara is still in the same division. And honestly, I look at them, I kind of look at them the same way I look at the Flyers. Okay, the Flyers lost Niskanen, but they have Carter Hart. Okay, they lost Krug and Chara, but they have Tuukka Rask. So I'm not necessarily insanely worried because I honestly think the Flyers and Bruins have the 2 best goaltending tandems in the division. I really don't know who is number 1. I think they're honestly neck and neck I think they're really tied for first, to be honest. But overall, I honestly, I kind of look at it like I still think the Bruins are one of the best teams in the division. I mean, they have that top line, they have the depth. Overall, I think their play overall might dip because last year we saw they were phenomenal at home last season. But they lost a lot of games in overtime and shootout. I think they ended the season with 12 overtime and shootout wins, or it might have been 13. But it was right around that range where they had a lot of games where they kind of slipped away from them. But overall, I mean, it's tough. One question I want to ask though, what are your guys' opinion on the Rangers going into this year? Because I think this is kind of the hot take that's like, it's similar to last year, but it's not at the same time because they added a little bit. Obviously, they add Lafreniere, the number 1 overall pick, and it makes me think like, are the Rangers going to be better, or are they just going to be kind of the same, maybe a little bit better, a couple games, or whatnot? Or do you guys think they make the playoffs?
I think they're going to be better. I still think they're too young. They have a lot of young players, especially on the forward core. They have some young players on the blue line, especially in net with Shesterkin. They're going to be a much better team, but I still think they're not at that level yet to where they're going to be the ones that are expected to make the playoffs. I think they're still a very, very young team. They're growing in the right direction, but I don't think they're just there yet. And Tyson, what are your thoughts on this? Because that's definitely going to be something described for probably one of these teams, I guess, in this entire division is the Rangers.
They're hard to predict in so many ways, and a lot of it is, again, is like you said, the youth factor. Like Adam Fox was ridiculous on the back end last year, and then Capo Caco up front, the 2nd overall pick in the 2019 draft, had a pretty rough rookie season on counting stats, but his underlines were really good. His underlying numbers were really good. So a guy like him may have a breakout in sophomore year. And so I see them as a huge wild card where it wouldn't surprise me if they made the playoffs, and it wouldn't surprise me if they crash and burn. Also, especially now without Lundqvist, at least to kind of help stabilize on the veteran presence side of things with Shesterkin and Georgiev in goal. They do have some solid talent, but in terms of leadership as a whole with an extremely young roster, it could be interesting. So, I mean, Panarin is ridiculous. He could have easily won the Hart last year. And he's only getting, the pieces around him are only getting better. So, yeah, I agree. I think they could be a wild card option. I think I'm having a hard time fully committing to them as being like a playoff team, but I also wouldn't be surprised either if everything goes exactly according to plan. I think they could.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to me, I think they're like the 5 or 6 to me. Like, I can see them battling with a couple teams, but again, like, I think they're too young, honestly. I feel like overall they have a lot of guys that are just unwritten. You don't know what you're going to get from them. It's kind of just like, it's up in the air at this point. Like, I'm not necessarily sure right now what to say about them because, again, they're so far off. I mean, like, well, I shouldn't say that because they're not that far off. I think in 2-3 years they're going to be watch out because they're going to be deadly. But I think it's going to be tough to see that young of a team and counting on that many young guys to take you into a playoffs, especially in a shortened season where if they start to if they have a tough beginning of the season, there really is no room for error, and that's just not for the Rangers. That's really for all the teams. The Flyers can't start off slow. Nobody can. They need to be ready from the hop. And obviously, Tyson, as you said earlier, with no preseason, it's harder. I honestly, I think overall, I think it's going to be some of it is so neck and neck. And honestly, I feel like any prediction I give at this point is never wrong. Amadeo, that. Because again, I think last year we did predictions for about the first month of the season, and I think I was almost negative at one point. I might have ended negative, to be honest with you. But overall, I mean, I really don't know with the Rangers. I think they're kind of unwritten at this point. It looks like their starting goaltender for next year has, he's looked at as one of the top goalies in the league to some people, and he's played 12 NHL games. So I'm really not too sure how to think because I think there's a lot of people that are overhyping them, and I think there's a lot of people that might be underhyping them. I'm really not too sure, to be honest. But overall, I think they'll be in that 5-6 range. I honestly don't know because, again, are they better than Buffalo? Are they better than a team like Pittsburgh? I really don't know. So I think it's tough.
Yeah. It's just like there's some teams in this division that you can't factor out. Can't factor out
Yep.
Washington just because of that core. You can't factor out Pittsburgh just because of that core. Even though I do think Pittsburgh's goaltending got a lot weaker, you still can't factor out Crosby and Malkin. That's just, you can't do that. And just looking around at the other teams in the division, the Islanders, they got Barry Trotz, and they play very well under his type of system. They're a team that probably will make the playoffs. The Flyers, they were a team that proved themselves last year, and they got a lot better as the season went along. You can't count the Flyers out. Like, really, the only team you can count out are the Devils. Maybe, you, like I said, you could throw Buffalo into that conversation, but Buffalo, I do feel like, is going to be a lot better this year. Not saying they're going to be playoff better. They're going to be a lot better than they were last year, though. But it's like what you said, Chris. There's no room for error this entire season. No. If you go on one little skid, that can honestly ruin your season.
Yeah. 4 games is huge. Like if a team gets like a 4 or 5 game losing streak, you're screwed. That's 10 points. That's 8 to 10 points in a game, and and that's already it really isn't. I mean, it's tough.
And the Devils, like you said, they did get deeper. Like in other words, like Jack Hughes had the first overall pick in 2019. He had a rough year last year as a rookie, a hard transition. Who isn't to say he got bigger and stronger this offseason, which is the rumor. Yeah. And he actually looks like the guy that we all thought the Devils were getting first overall this year, with extended time off. And adding Ryan Murray and Ty Smith is likely to make their roster. He's this 20-year-old rookie defenseman who's stellar, who had an amazing WHL career. I believe won more than one defenseman of the year in the league. Jumping in as a 20-year-old, likely a third pairing guy. So there's just so many things where even you look at the Devils and I'm like, well, if Subban say bounces back even a little bit, and they stay healthy, like they could still give teams a run. There's not going to be any easy games at all in that division. That is for sure.
Yeah, just bringing in the other comments from today. And this is coming from Sean once again, talking about going back to the Islanders series when we were talking about the physicality aspect. He thinks that their lack of physicality showed against the Islanders in the playoff series last year. It seems like they lost a lot of the puck battles. And yeah, just going into that playoff series, there was so much time off. It was like what Chris said before that. It was a tale of 2 different Flyers teams.
Yeah.
The Flyers from the regular season and the Flyers from the playoffs. That's why you can't look at one specific aspect. You have to look at both of those equally, because the Flyers were just completely 2 different teams from regular season and playoffs. So, and then looking at some other comments right here, this is one I like a lot right here from Tales of a Failed Life. I personally am looking forward to this season's oddness. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing that you can tell your kids about. Hopefully it's once in a lifetime. And honestly, yeah, this is going to be a weird season. It definitely is going to be. With what the NFL is going through right now, there's like, they're getting through the season, but there's like, it feels like every week there's like a new team that's going circles through a different strike in COVID. But they're finding the way to get through it. And NBA, they just got underway. So let's see if the NHL can find some way to pull this off. I believe they are going to. There's definitely going to be some bumps. But
how are the Sixers doing, Amadeo?
They're the Sixers. They are the Sixers. Oh, God. It's funny. As much as I love all Philadelphia teams, I love making fun of them as well, just because they make it so easy.
Yeah.
They make it so easy.
So some of it is just so like it's like not even predictable at this point. You just know what's going to happen,
Because you get the Eagles eliminated against the Dallas Cowboys out of all damn teams, and then the Sixers, they started off with 2 wins, and then they followed up with, even though they're 3-1 right now, 2 out of those 4 games they played absolutely terrible. It's just, oh my God, Philadelphia sports, Jesus Christ. And here we got another question from Sean right here, talking about like what's going on in the stadium. Are we going to do the prop cutout boards this season at the Wells Fargo Center? Will that be very intimidating to some teams? That'd be honestly funny. Remember the petition at the Flyer? I think Gritty and Kevin Hayes put out to have Gritty in the Wells Fargo Center.
Could you imagine they just had every seat in the lower bowl cut out with Gritty's face on it, and then had him just walking around? What's him?
Yeah.
It would feel like a Fanatic too in the Citizens Bank Park.
It's going to be so interesting, because I was reading this week that Nashville will have fans and Florida will have fans. So the Panthers announced, I think Florida can have 25% capacity. Nashville
Wow.
like 15% capacity.
Florida,
So
I really want to make this joke right now, but Florida
I
and
do.
Arizona,
I do.
it's just really like the same thing every year.
I mean,
I mean,
25%
really no
capacity,
different than
that's how much they
there.
fill. That's
Yeah.
how much
I
they
think
fill
they're
on
gonna-
a daily basis.
I think the number's going to be about 5,000, which will be only about 5,000 less than normal. So
And then we got another little quip right here from Sean talking to Chris about his predictions. So if Chris tells you that it's going to be sunny the next day, bring your umbrella.
He's right.
That was Chris's luck with the predictions
It's
last
a good
year.
thing I'm not on the news because those guys, man. Oh God, sometimes they are so off. It's like I'm down. Remember when it snowed like a couple weeks ago?
Yes,
They said 8 to 10 inches. I think we got like
at least maybe 2.
yeah. It was like it seemed like it looked like it was going to be that, and then ended up picking it up.
No, that's the thing every year during the winter.
Every
with the weather. They'll say we're getting a snowstorm. It's going to be at least a foot of snow. It never turns out that way.
I remember a couple years ago they said they were going to get like 27 inches, and we got like half an inch.
The last true snowstorm that I actually remember in this damn city was when, I know we're completely off topic at this point, but it's fun. But the last true snowstorm that I remember was when I was in 6th grade. And it snowed the entire damn week, and I was off from school the entire damn week. That's the last true snowstorm. We got like so many feet of snow. It was unbelievable. And honestly, it hasn't been the same since that time. But that's my snow rant right there. in the weather rant right there. And we got another comment from Sean right here. Sean is commenting a lot. Thank you very much right there, Sean. His one hope is that by the playoffs, we can have actual human beings in attendance, need the atmosphere and electricity in the buildings. That goes right to that topic directly with some of the teams right now. They are going to be allowing fans. And I feel like that's going to be something that's discussed as we get into the warmer months, as we get into March, as we get into April, as we get into May, even closer towards the playoffs. That's definitely something that's going to be discussed. That's going to, right now, I would say majority of the teams up north, they're not going to be allowing fans, especially the Canadian teams. They're not going to be allowing fans. It's mostly going to be teams more in the south because that's where a lot of the football teams are allowing fans. A lot of the basketball teams are I think they're allowing fans. I'm not even sure actually what the NBA is doing right there. I know with California, that's a whole nother story. Tyson, I know you're more familiar with California since you're closer to there. Like, what's the deal with the California teams and like specifically like San Jose and those teams?
I think they still don't know about San Jose in particular. We'll find out about Los Angeles and Anaheim soon. I think it's been pretty quiet. There hasn't been much news, but in terms of COVID-19, LA County is slammed. I mean, they've been out of ICU beds for a couple weeks, so I think that they're not likely to do anything that would potentially increase those odds. Though they are talking about putting students back in school in February. So I'm not really sure how those things are going to correlate, but I mean, California teams, no way they're going to have fans. I know there's still talk of trying to figure out where San Jose is going to be. I believe, they're allowing the Lakers to play in the Staples Center. I believe they're going to do the same for the Kings. I believe the Ducks will be okay where they're at least to start with. So it's mostly the Sharks, and I think there's hope there that they'll have something figured out. And by the time training camp officially starts, so yeah, it's still kind of a West Coast in particular now is kind of a mess, and they're a little late to the game on getting kids in school. They're a little late to the game on making decisions regarding sporting events. So I think we'll still have to kind of wait on that front. I'm north in Canada too. I think they just finally cleared this past week with the Canadian government collectively how they're going to do that in each province. So it does look like it's a go. There was a lot of questions surrounding travel because in Canada you can't travel between provinces without doing a 2-week quarantine. So if you were the Leafs normally and say you go play Winnipeg, you got to do a 2-week quarantine when you get there, and then a 2-week quarantine when you come home. That's what's expected. So I think they're going to try to give them an exception. That's kind of what's been rumored anyway. But they're going to have a lot stricter guidelines for when they get home. So thankfully, I think they've been able to work some of those things out. But time will tell, and I think we're going to see, as we've seen now, just states or provinces will change rules, and they'll change as we get more data on the spread of this thing and whether the vaccine actually starts to take away number of cases and what that looks like. I think it could be an interesting sort of play, but it's going to take a while, unfortunately, still. And there's a chance I think we could see something like San Jose starting in Arizona, finishing in San Jose, or even vice versa. It's kind of like a who knows.
Yeah, and honestly, it makes me think like that is going to be so weird. It's not even funny because it really makes me think how they do the ice and everything. Like, is it just going to be all Coyote stuff, or is it going to be like they switch it up with the Sharks?
Yeah,
like it's just going to be so weird. I don't know. It's just like a lot of that stuff makes me think because I know that they're able to like obviously like we've seen it before with the basketball and the hockey arena. Like they like Wells Fargo Center example. They switched around from basketball to the Flyers. They were able to do that. But, like, I really don't know. Like, I feel like they have to keep the ice. Like, once it's painted, it doesn't come off, right? It's just because usually the basketball court goes on top. So I'm not too sure how they would do that if they just keep, like, they play in Arizona on Arizona's ice or what. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's a rumor, too, that the Sharks, Elliot Friedman reported last week that the Sharks may actually start in Kansas City, Missouri,
really?
Because they don't have any restrictions. Kansas City has an actual arena that they could play in that's owned by the same owner as the Sharks. So, in other words, it'd be a kind of natural progression to move them over there. But, again, you got players and families. Like, I don't know that people that are living on the Bay Area are necessarily jumping at the gun to move to Kansas City, Missouri. But there's been stranger things. I mean, the NBA, the Toronto Raptors are playing in Tampa Bay this year.
Right.
So and then the Blue Jays played in Buffalo. So that's a potential option, though. I do think they're going to end up in San Jose, but I also think it would be kind of cool to see, some of these markets didn't work out. I mean, there's a huge list of potential NHL markets available to the general public. Like, I think Austin, Texas has been rumored for years. Last few years as being a place that wants an expansion roster. Houston, Texas, even San Antonio, Texas. You got 3 huge cities there that have less restrictions that they could jump into if they really wanted to. Kansas City, Charlotte, North Carolina. There's a lot of cities that have some sort of following of hockey. I mean, Canada, Quebec City, right? That they could just jump back into. And I think if teams got creative on that front, it would be kind of fun to see as well. It'd be cool to see a team. I mean, I think it'd be cool to see a team play in Austin, Texas, or Portland, where I live. I mean, we got a full Moda Center here. There's a WHL team that just pushed their season back. They play where the Portland Trailblazers play. They put the ice down. They put the boards over top, like you said, Chris, kind of with the Flyers and 76ers. They already have that set up. It's already a professional arena. The Winterhawks have dressing rooms in there that they use when they play. And it'd be easy for a team to jump in there. I mean, that place can hold up to 19,000 people. It's a beautiful facility, professional facility. So could be potential opportunities for even growth in the game right now, which, obviously these are trying, difficult times across the board. It's weird to talk about openings and not, and the data constantly shifting surrounding what's best or not. But I do think it could be some cool opportunities to see some newer markets kind of tap into what's going on.
Again, speaking of, like, there's one comment from the comment section right here, another one from Sean saying, move the Panthers to Quebec, reinstate the Nordiques. Honestly, I don't think that's going to happen.
It would make me, and it's funny that everybody says that because could you imagine the Avs, like, they get the reverse retro Nordiques and then they move them to Quebec? Like, everybody would be in such a tizzy over that. It's not even funny. Like, just over them moving them, and then, like, one thing I want to ask, I don't know if you guys saw this, but if you've played NHL 21, they have the updated uniforms. Have you seen the Avalanche uniforms for this year? They're, like, for their Adidas away jersey, their pants and their gloves are blue. They changed that.
They did.
They have blue pants this year and blue gloves.
I never saw that, honestly.
Oh my god, it looks horrible. On the away jersey, it looks horrible. It's so bad. I'm serious. When you're done in Tyson, I don't know if you have NHL too, but if you do, anybody listening, please go to the Avalanche and look at their away jersey. It looks horrible.
Oh god.
They have blue pants with the maroon and the white jersey. They have, I think they have it with the reverse retro too, and it's also with I don't remember what it is. I think they said they were changing their alternate logo. Like, how they have they have that C logo.
Yeah.
They were supposed to change it to the logo from their Stadium Series game. which that could be something too. Like they have that dark blue, but again, I saw that I was like, and I'm playing the game. I'm like, is this a glitch?
That's what I'm thinking
like,
right there. That's what I'm thinking. Like
it can't be though, because it's all updated. Like they even had a patch for it.
It's weird because like you probably see the Avalanche like say something like that. Oh, we're changing our pants for this year. Did they?
I think they did. Yeah.
That is something I have to research once this podcast is over. I'm probably going to research the next time you guys talk right there because that's like something that's like boggling my mind.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've seen it before. Like I follow a couple Avalanche accounts on Instagram, like just like people I've met and stuff. And they've talked about it too. And it's been like reported by Avalanche media. And I'm like, well, I guess it's true, but I don't follow any of these guys on Twitter. So like, I don't know if it's true or not, but again, I mean, I'm not too sure. It makes me think if it's in NHL and if it's an updated roster and everything and the game's updated, I have to think it's the actual thing, because why would they not put the full uniform in the game? That just doesn't make sense to me. So again, I mean, we've seen, obviously they had the update for the reverse retros. They had to, add those in there and things like that. And then they actually had a patch on there too for the Senators one. Which was one of the bugs they had on. Apparently, the logo was not looking right or something. It's when I think the glitch with that was it is actually their old logo. And when I say the old one, it was the one they previously just had this past season. It was that logo on the reverse retro jersey, which I thought was hilarious.
That actually is pretty funny. And just to move on from, because we've been talking about the schedule a lot, there's like so much things you can talk about the schedule right here. We'll definitely get more into depth as we get closer and closer towards the season. There's so many like storylines that you can draw out from this schedule that's like it's not enough to talk about in one podcast episode. So maybe definitely in the next episode when we get closer and closer towards maybe our season preview, we'll definitely get looking into this schedule more in depth. But I want to move towards the World Juniors right now because they are underway and they have been exciting. There's been a lot of lopsided games, but exciting nonetheless. So Tyson and Chris, just looking at the entire World Juniors as a whole right now, like how have you felt about them? And just looking at the Flyers prospects too, Cam York, Bobby Brink, and maybe the few instances that you might see Emil Andre playing for Sweden. Like, what are your thoughts on them? So Tyson, I want to get your thoughts right there first. What are your thoughts on the World Juniors as a whole, and also the few Flyers prospects that are playing right now?
Yeah, I've recorded every game. I've watched pretty much every game so far. If not, I was up way early this morning, kind of flipping through video again because I love it. But yeah, this year's has been interesting. It's been a year where a team like Canada or even the U.S. has had players on the roster that maybe wouldn't have normally been released because the NHL season is not happening. So like Trevor Zegras is leading the whole tournament in points. I'm not sure if he'd be on the Ducks at this point. I had him as a bubble prospect, as maybe he can make the Ducks, likely to start on their AHL team, but he likely was not going to be released for this tournament normally. Just like in Canada, I mean, before Kirby Dach got hurt, that was the case for him. Peyton Krebs, who has been pretty quiet, but Vegas had him penciled in on a winger position. Bowen Byram, who's been rotating as Canada's captain, best blue liner likely in the entire tournament, I think, in terms of talent overall, would likely be competing for an Avalanche spot. Just a ridiculous defender. So you just have all these guys on teams like Canada, United States, even a couple on Sweden, like Victor Soderstrom, their top blue liner, who is a Arizona pick that is likely going to start the season with them. They're in this tournament because there is no NHL, and they likely wouldn't be. And they wouldn't be otherwise. And then you have teams like Switzerland and Germany and Austria that either have been, if you're Germany, they got nailed.
Austria, man. I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Like I watched the game, I'm like, Jesus Christ. These guys can catch a break.
No, they have,
their goaltenders have been insane.
Yeah.
Like I just can't. Oh God, it's insane. I mean, they literally have maybe one NHL prospect in Rossi. Yep. I think that's it.
Yep.
And the other guys, I don't even know if they'll ever sniff the NHL. Honestly, I really don't know too much about their team.
No, they won't. I mean, and that's what's hard about this tournament is no one will be relegated this year, but in the past they'll have a relegation, right? So the worst team in the World Juniors will get bumped down a level. I think they call it like the World Junior A Championship and World Junior B Championship. But so what oftentimes will happen is like a team like say Austria with Marco Rossi will get bumped up because they'll dominate the B tournament, and then they'll make the A. And then now this year, some of their players graduated, and they have a lot of underage guys and just Rossi, and they're brutal. So that's why we've seen so many blowouts. But it has been fun too. I mean, even Slovakia only has, I believe, like 2 drafted NHL prospects on their whole roster, and they gave Canada a pretty good run the other day. So Canada only beat them 3-1. So regardless, it's just fun to watch. I mean, you see the passion in the younger players, even without crowds and that sort of thing. It's a pretty glorious. Yes, that's how I feel exactly. The goal horn. The Oilers goal horn is like my least favorite. Oh my god.
I saw that meme the night of the 16-2, 7-1, and the 11-0 games with Canada, Germany, and Austria, US. And I literally sat here in my room, and I just came up. From doing the game, and I'm about to make the video, and I see this. I was crying, laughing for like 5 minutes. It was so
My son
funny.
thought it was I've been watching with my kids, and my son thought it was a fire truck every time. Just running to the window. He's like, "Daddy, is it a fire truck?" I'm like, "No, it's not a fire truck." It's just a goal horn."
So for people who are listening to this on Apple and other podcasting platforms who aren't watching the live stream, so right now we put a picture up on screen that's basically a meme right now of The Office's Michael Scott making that like typical like his mad face, like he looks really pissed off, and the quote says, "Hockey fans after hearing the Oilers goal horn 38 times during that day." I was just like I'm just like, before the Oilers moved into their new arena, their goal horn was fine in Rexall Place. But then once they moved into Rogers, it's just like, what the hell happened to the goal horn? They made it worse. I don't know how that's possible.
It stinks. It's bad. I mean, I think it's up there as one of the worst goal horns in the league.
Yes.
That topic could literally be an episode in itself.
That could be. That could honestly be a topic in itself. We would have our own podcast episode. We would have hopefully the share screen without any internet connection issues right there, and then we would play the audio and then time to just rank each goal horn. That would be an interesting episode. But honestly, right now, just quick question: who do you think is the best goal horn in the league? No bias involved.
The
Both of
Avs.
you. The Avs.
The Avs. I love their goal horn. It's so deep. Oh, it's great. I love the crowd behind it too. Like, it's awesome.
Did you say the Habs or the Avs?
Avalanche. Sorry, Avs.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the Montreal Canadian ones, even as a
Okay.
Leafs fan. I think that it's kind of classic, and it sounds, I don't know. It always, for some reason, always evokes emotion in me. Most of the other ones I'm kind of like meh about, but that one is always memorable.
I'm trying to think to myself, like, what's the best, my favorite. Honestly, I think it's for overall. I think I like St. Louis's goal horn the best. I don't know why.
Now
St.
the worst one I've ever heard live was Pittsburgh.
Oof.
That goal horn is horrible. And every time they got that stupid "Let's Go Pens" chant, oh my god, that is just it's terrible. I just can't stand it. It's probably because it's obvious. Obviously, it's because I'm such a Flyers fan. I don't like it, but oh god, that horn live is bad. It really is.
I think the only other goal horn that I've heard live was Los Angeles's when I was in LA a couple of years ago. Honestly, at first I was like, the goal horn, it's okay. But when I was there, I was like, oh my god, this thing is loud. I didn't think it was this loud. Imagine going to Vegas with how loud that arena is in general. Just hearing the speaker system and the goal horn, just like I feel like you'll go deaf listening to a game in Vegas.
Not Winnipeg. Winnipeg is crazy because their arena has such a low. It has such a low roof, and it doesn't hold that many people as the least number of people. So it's like it's loud anyways, and then it's just all condensed. So everything is like I used to go to AHL games there when I was a kid, and back when the Manitoba Moose were there after the Jets moved to Arizona, and it was just brutal, absolutely brutal. In terms of how loud it would get in there. So it was as bad as going to like college football game with the Oregon Ducks. Yeah. And when you can't hear yourself think for, 4 hours or whatever, it's very similar in that environment.
Yeah,
Honestly,
go ahead, Chris.
I honestly, I've been to some Flyers games where it's been like that. Like I can't even hear myself think. Like if they've gotten that, like they've had some games where it hasn't been like it doesn't like remind you of a game that's like, oh, the crowd's gonna be really loud. Like it wasn't a playoff game, wasn't it? I've only been to one playoff game and they got shut out. So I didn't even get to hear the horn of the crowd, whatever. And that kind of stunk. But some of the games I've been to where like they've went to overtime or scored late in the third period, that place gets loud. Like honestly, I think the loudest game that I might have heard from, and this was just through the TV. I'm there. I think you were actually there this year. It was the game they won 5-1 against the Rangers at home, and Sanheim tied it late in the second, and Hayes scored. And that was like, for a while, everybody was talking about the attendance this past year because they had really weird attendance numbers for being such a good team.
And we talked about this on like one episode so long ago in the past. I think Hunter Brody was on during that time, and like we were talking about the attendance issue. And honestly, it was only really just one game where the attendance issue was really just evident, and that was just one game against the Anaheim Ducks. That was basically it.
That game. Yeah. And that was the game because everybody looked at that game because it was Lindblom. They had Lindblom there, and it was that was Hockey Fights Cancer Night, wasn't it?
I think that was Hockey Fights Cancer Night.
I don't remember if it was Hockey Fights Cancer Night or they just had a night for Lindblom. I can't remember.
It might have been both.
It probably honestly might have been both. Well, no, Hockey Fights Cancer Night is usually in November, and that game was in December, so that wouldn't make sense.
Okay, it was a separate night just for Lindblom because they wore the Hockey Fights Cancer for Lindblom. Yeah, I remember it now more.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally over a year ago, but it's funny because they had like I got there late that night, and honestly, like. I remember it because I got down there and the bottom bowl didn't look like it was filled, but they were taking pictures up top and everything, and it was like completely empty. But then I feel like honestly, I think one of the reasons might have been, as stupid as it sounds. Well, it's not really stupid, but the traffic was bad that night because I didn't get there till halfway through the first period, and it was just like I don't know. I mean, it just took a long time to get there. And that might have been one of the reasons, but I remember around that time it was Christmas and stuff, so that could have been a factor. I really don't know, to be honest.
I think it was like the week of or the week before Christmas, that game. So that can also add to why there was so little attendance that game, and also added it was the Anaheim Ducks. It was a California team that's not really going to draw attendance, so you got to add all those factors in. So going back to the World Juniors, I want to get your guys' thoughts on Cam York, Bobby Brink, and those players.
Yeah.
So Chris, I want to start with you. With the past few games that USA has played, Cam York and Bobby Brink have started to shine a little more, especially with Cam York, even before the World Juniors, being named the captain of Team USA. So I want to get your thoughts on Cam York and Bobby Brink. So Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I guess just to start off as York as being the captain, it's a great honor to see him get that, to be honest with you. From what I've seen from York this year, he's unbelievable. Just this tournament alone, I know in yesterday's game against the Czechs, he had 3 assists all in the third period. He's played top line minutes just about every night. He's been that number one defenseman. He was on the second pair of these last 2 games against Austria and the Czechs, but he's pretty much gotten first line minutes. He played, I believe, around 18, 20 minutes in both games. So he's pretty much played with, I honestly think he's been up there with a lot of the guys he's played with. He's played with Faber. He's played with Sanderson for a little bit. He also did play with Thurn as well. So he's been playing with most of the guys. As for Brink, he's been on that line with Berard and Farinacci, and they've been stellar. They had Brink did have 2 goals in yesterday's game versus the Czech. I didn't think Brink I honestly thought Brink was not great against Russia. He just was nowhere to be found. And that it was a little bit concerning because it was I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more of him. As for the game versus Austria, I personally thought he was terrible. I didn't see much of him. He didn't look at times he honestly didn't even look like he could really hold his stick right, to be honest. And I know it sounds cheesy, whatever, but it just looked like there was times where he kind of gave up on plays. He was kind of getting bodied around at times. Saw it a lot versus Russia. And Austria, it was kind of those games where he had a couple chances to score, but that was really it. He didn't really do much else. And then that game against the Czechs yesterday, was great. He played great. I think that, again, that line, it's been that grinder line. I feel like some of those guys are getting misused. Brink, I honestly think could play higher in the lineup. I don't think they'll change up the lines. They could. because again, that line's been so good. Why would they change it? I mean, I believe in the whole tournament, I think they have 10 points combined and they're all +4 each. So that just shows you how good they've been. And overall, I think they'll most likely keep it together. As for Andre, he is playing third pair tonight, which is good because he was the 7th against the game versus the Czech Republic, and he didn't really play much. He had 2 shifts in the first period. And I believe in the last game they played against Austria in the 4-0 win, he played top pair. He played really solid, played 20 minutes, 17 seconds. And overall, I thought he had a really good game. And this past game, he got bumped up. This game coming up tonight against Russia, which is at 9:30 in around 25 minutes or so, he's playing third pairing tonight. So he gets bumped up a little bit. He gets rewarded for that past game. And overall, I think it's been a good showing for the Flyers prospects and what I've seen overall. But Tyson, I want to hear your thoughts on these guys too.
Yeah, Brink is an interesting one. His biggest knock has always been kind of his skating strides. When you mentioned even like the holding his stick thing, that's kind of been his MO. Is like he's doesn't skate like quote unquote normal in many ways. He's just
weird. It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you watch him all the time and he just looks slightly off. But then in the midst of it, he always finds a way to put up points.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a unique prospect in the sense of like, he has some offensive skill that we've seen. He scored 2 goals the other day. But he scored them not from like quote unquote goal scoring areas so much as like through in those what we call like kind of the dirty areas. So he isn't afraid. He's very tenacious on the forecheck when he wants to be. Just always buzzing, kind of in deep. He has some pretty good passes as well, right through the neutral zone in that game as well, kind of showing his offensive flair. So I think too sometimes in a tournament like this, like in Denver, he's a top line right winger, and so you go from top line right winger to like third line right winger in a depth
and that's the thing.
Yeah,
and kind of just to go off of it too, it's like. And again, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, if you think about it, like it's weird because he's put in that position where he's already one of their best players, and then he has to go to a deep USA team, especially on that top front on those first 2 lines, where it's like he could be playing up there, but again, they're so good. Where like I wish he could get more minutes, but again, he's had a really what is so funny.
Thank you, Hunter. I saw that comment at the end right there in the middle of your talking. What? For people that are listening to this on Apple and Spotify, so my buddy Hunter just commented on here. It says, "I want to trade Carter Hart." Hunter, what the hell are you talking about right there, buddy?
But yeah, I mean, kind of just to go. Thanks, Hunter. Now I'm going to laugh through this whole thing. Kind of just to go off of it too. I mean, I feel like he honestly could play higher in the lineup. And again, I know I just did bring it up, but it makes me think if they do break up that line, I don't think they will. I mean, they are going into a tough game against Sweden, so it could be something, but I'm not really too sure. But again, I feel like they've kind of misused Brink a little bit. I mean, I think they did last year too. I mean, he played real low on that team. I think he honestly was playing 4th line for most of it. So I wish he could get used a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, and that's what makes this tournament so hard is that it has an international spotlight. I mean, the NHL Network, you can watch it on Canada, TSN, basically their version of ESPN. It's everywhere. Everybody's paying attention to it, even in European countries. And so it's easy in this like kind of 7-game format, more or less, to kind of like, look at a guy, let's say like Brink or something like that, or even Andre. Like you're like, man, he's only playing mostly third pairing, 70 minutes. But then, over the course of what could be in a year or two, like we could be laughing at this. I mean, I was watching old video leading up to this, and there was this Canada team where this guy stood out. His name was Stefan Dello Rovere. Who even knows that name, right? So there's always guys like that kind of will shine in the midst. I remember Bob Gepfert. He was a USA goalie. I think the highest level he played was East Coast League and was a star at the World Juniors. So again, Tyler Parsons, he won a gold for World Juniors for USA. He hasn't been able to barely play in the AHL for the Flames, even though he was a 2nd rounder and is considered to be a really solid prospect for a while there. So the World Juniors always kind of hit or miss. But nonetheless, it's still fun to watch and still, fun to keep track of. I was similar to you with Cam York. Just a few thoughts on him is that I like how, you see video of him on Michigan and he looks really dynamic with frequency, like crashing the net, running the power play. Not that he's not doing some of those things on USA, but he's playing a pretty safe game. He's just kind of moving the puck up quick, and just making really smart decisions for the most part.
He's done that whole year with Michigan too. I mean, he's just very quick through the boards. I mean, right there.
And I think that's a good sign because it means that he's showing his versatility too, where he's recognizing right now, like, okay, I probably need to play a little safer. I can trust my forwards to carry the puck in. I don't have to be this offensive juggernaut right now. And he's adapting his game as such. And so I've appreciated seeing that in his game. So again, like, it's crazy thinking about the Flyers, looking at their depth chart, how young they are, even on the blue line in particular. We're talking about 2 more blue line prospects with a blue line that has a bunch of guys that are still under 25. So the future is still really bright. And it's been cool to see in the World Juniors.
And one thing I want to pass to you guys, if you want to know something that's funny, you know how much, like a couple of times how we make fun of ESPN and their like lack of knowledge with hockey. You want to know something that actually like surprised me a couple days ago? They actually showed highlights from the World Juniors. I was like,
wow.
What?
Yeah, trying to get an NHL contract. That's why
they are.
It's funny too because if you're not a hockey fan, you don't know what the World Juniors are. Honestly, I think that's just one of the things.
I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, never mind."
Unless you're Canadian, then it's like it's like I don't know if you guys knew this, but in Canada, the 26th of December is Boxing Day, as they call it. So it's like on Boxing Day is when Canada, most things are still shut down in Canada in a lot of instances, and everyone just watches World Juniors all day. So that's what we grew up doing. We just watch World Juniors. It's like popcorn, beer, poutine. I don't know. That sounds very stereotypical, but and just watching World Juniors all day and then you just basically shut down if you can until New Year's, or everyone's watching it at work, and that's what I grew up doing. So, a lot of my family doesn't watch any hockey at all. Watches only World Juniors every year. So,
that's a great pastime right there. Watching the world, like it's like you have to be either Canadian or just a hockey fan. Unless if you're not two of those things, you don't know what the World Juniors are. And thankfully, we have a Canadian joined us right here. We're all hockey fans. So the World Juniors are a great thing to watch. And to get to some of our last talks on the day with some updates that are going on with the NHL right now, there are a little bit of heartbreaking things to talk about. We all know with Henrik Lundqvist, he had to sit out this season because of his heart condition. He is now getting open heart surgery, so hopefully everything's the best with him and prayers to him. And now we also find out that the captain of the Chicago Blackhawks, Jonathan Toews, he is also going to miss some times too, due to a really just unknown medical condition that he has right now. So he is going to miss some time. So that's difficult to see right there. And in the NHL with COVID and everything, that there are allowing players to opt out. Even though Toews hasn't quote unquote opted out of the season yet, it's still like hard to see that he's going through something right now and that he's going to miss time. It's just man, I mean, that's at this point, you could just say prayers to you and just hopefully everything's the best and you can return to the ice in top shape. Like that's just the one thing that you can hope at this point.
Yeah, I feel for Toews. I feel for both of them, but Toews in particular is known as a fitness juggernaut. Like a few years ago when he started to decline a little bit, like he hired all new trainers. He started this new kind of like meditation regime to try to help himself overall. Like his commitment level in terms of NHL players, in terms of what he does in the off season is, if it's not the top, it's pretty dang close. So when you see a player like that with that much commitment to his overall game in the off season, just be like, here's where I'm at with the amount of success he's had, it's really sad. So he's been one of my favorites since he's been in the league. I have a couple of his jerseys and rookie cards and some autographs, and it just, I mean, Lundqvist too. But in terms of Toews, it's just, you know, his fitness level, what he's known for. So if he's struggling with that, like that's obviously not something as simple as like, well, maybe he's just not feeling good for a month or two. I'm guessing it's going to take a while, especially with the Blackhawks likely now tanking, missing their top two centers.
Now that they don't have him and Doc too.
Yep.
And it's funny to go off that too. I don't know if you guys saw this, but but I guess listen to it. Kirby Doc said on TSN that he thought his stick broke. Yeah. Like the sound of his wrist. Oof. He thought his stick broke. And then he realized like that was his hand, like his wrist. Like I was like, oh my god, like could you imagine? Like, oh, did my stick just break? Oh no, my hand is just like completely bent the other way.
If you,
Like,
if you want to know a crazy story, when I used to play, that actually literal same thing happened to me. Where I went to hit somebody. I didn't get slashed. I went to hit somebody and I missed and I broke my stick and broke my wrist and cracked the bone. And I didn't know because the glove was the way the gloves are now. It was holding it in place. So I thought I jammed it and I heard a snap and saw my stick was broken. And I finished the game until I went home and took my glove off when I got in the dressing room and my wrist just dropped and started shaking like this. I was in a cast for like 3 months. It was ridiculous. They were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I thought it was the stick. I thought I just jammed it." So the wrists are weird. I've had more painful injury. Some people were like, "Was it that painful?" And I was like, "No, it actually wasn't."
Really?
Yeah.
Like, you were able to shoot and everything?
Yeah, I finished the game. I punched somebody else with it. I don't know. I wouldn't
I sort of hat trick after it.
But
oh yeah, I just lit up the tendy, scored 6 goals. nothing different.
I wasn't that good. But I tore my ACL twice, and that was way more painful than a broken wrist. So I don't know. I've heard that from other people, so it's possible, but it's a weird injury, those wrists. It can be a little deceiving. So when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, that happened to me, and I didn't realize it till much later.
Yeah, that sounds like a painful story right there, even though like you didn't feel any pain going through that. But like just like some other stuff that's going around the league right now, we got some signings that I didn't expect to happen. Like a guy like Mike Hoffman signing a player tryout contract with the St. Louis Blues. Like Hoffman was one of the top free agents left on the market, and he signed a PTO. Where does that come from?
That's a flat cap COVID world for you.
or caps or convention is another way of putting it. Wait until they put Steen on long term and Tarasenko on LTIR. Yeah.
And now with the Tampa Bay Lightning too, that Kucherov's going to be missing the entire season.
That's a big blow.
And that insane trade to pick up 2 guys whose careers are done as well. And Marian Gaborik getting traded again.
Yeah.
Anders Nielsen just for the same thing. They'll just jump them to LTIR and
getting rid of Coburn and Paquette too. Get themselves like $3 million in cap. Yeah, and it's funny with Ottawa. Like they have like a complete NHL team right now.
They do.
They get Coburn and Paquette. They get Derek Stepan. Like they've done some stuff these last few days. And honestly, I could see them making the playoffs. I could see them making it as the 4. Like with their roster right now and some of the guys that they have, I legitimately could see them making the playoffs. I don't know if they will, but it could. I would not be surprised.
They'll be a fun team to watch at least.
Yeah,
very fun.
They have some youth in there for sure as well. And Stützle in Germany is probably going to make it, and
obviously Brady Tkachuk.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And just like looking at what Stützle has done from like a really depleted Germany team in the World Juniors, like they're dressing 14 skaters.
They dressed 12 today.
And they dressed 12 today. Oh my goodness. And it's just like Stützle is like probably just doing everything he can out there.
Yeah.
He's playing 30 minutes a night.
Yeah.
30 minutes as a forward. Who does that? That's like Chris Pronger minutes as a forward.
Literally. He played 31 the other night in that overtime winner against Slovakia. Obviously, it was overtime, but I don't know how long it was it into the overtime when he scored.
No. And he had highlight a real goal today, and I think they clocked him at like 30, 50 minutes or something like that.
That literally is Chris Pronger minutes. That's probably going to be close to like what Provorov will be getting in like a few years if it, like the game goes like overtime or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had games last year where he had 28, 29. And that was in regulation. I mean, it's weird with Provorov too because he can play like wherever, and the minutes with him is just unlimited.
Provorov just doesn't step off the ice for one game. He plays an entire 60 minutes.
Just keep him out there the whole period.
But think about it as a forward. That's what I find unbelievable is that like I played both defense and forward at sometimes, and so defense you can play 2 minutes at a time, right? Because say you have possession in the offensive zone, you can kind of chill for a little bit, right? Yeah. You're at like 20%, 30% for a lot of the shift. You're rarely at full 100% capacity. But if you're a forward or center like him, he's pushing himself for most of his shift at like 80%.
Back and forth and back and forth.
And then you're doing that for 30 minutes. I mean, he's going to run into Ottawa. He's going to be like 10 steps ahead of all those guys in training camp, or even makes it for that to start the season if they put him in the roster.
Yeah. And another signing, you also got Corey Perry signing with the Montreal Canadiens as well. Andreas Athanasiou, he signs with the Los Angeles Kings. Derek Brassard, he goes to Arizona. It's quite a few minor signings at this point. You got Carl Soderberg signing with the Chicago Blackhawks. Anthony Cirelli re-signed with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Ryan Miller re-signed with the Anaheim Ducks. Eric Holla went to Nashville. There's some minor signings that are going on, and it's still just like what you said, Chris. We're in a capped like COVID world at this point. I'm still like boggled that Mike Hoffman signs a PTO,
and I think the contract's coming out to 1 year, $4 million.
Really?
I believe so. And I saw it reported the other day. I do not know by who as of right now. I'd have to go back and look. But overall, I mean, it's weird because the top goalie this year that got signed was Murray, money-wise. And he got 6.25? Something like that?
I believe so.
And
6.25 or 6.5.
Yeah, and Holtby got 4.2. I don't even remember. It was so long ago.
I think Markstrom got the most out of all
Markstrom, you're right.
He had
Markstrom
6. Yeah.
Did he hit 6.5, Markstrom?
I think he had 6. I think he was 6 on the dot.
Oh,
was it? I could have sworn. Was Murray 6 then too?
I think Markstrom got the longest term, I think, out of all the goaltenders that were signed.
Yeah, he got 6 years, right? Or 6, 5
Yeah,
6 years?
I think he got 6, I think.
Yeah.
6.
I think it was some, and like there was like one signing that just like it completely like I just never knew happened. Like the Devils, they extended Mackenzie Blackwood to a 3-year contract worth $8.4
the other day. That was really like I saw that like 4 hours after it happened. I was like, what? I just saw this. I was like, I didn't even know this happened.
It was just like it's like there's so many like minor signings that are going on right now. Like Anthony Duclair, he went to Florida. It's just like it's like so many little signings. They're not signing for so much. It's just like it's not like popping to the eye. It's just like, oh, these players are just going to these teams. Okay. Big whoop, the NHL season is like almost underway. It's just like one of those situations that we got some before we wrap it up right here. We just bring in some more comments right here. We got Sean talking about how he hates ESPN and how hockey should stay with NBC Sports Network. Hey, you never know. The contract with the TV is ending soon, and the NHL does need to get a new TV contract, whether that's with NBC, whether that's with Fox, whether that's with ABC. You just never know what's going to happen. Who knows? Honestly, what channel do you think picks up the NHL after this contract ends? Do you think it's going to be NBC again, or do you think they're going to go to another network?
I honestly think it'll be NBC again. I can't see it going anywhere else, honestly. I mean, maybe USA, but that's probably not it. I don't know. I really don't know.
I think they would probably prefer to do more what NFL does in terms of like kind of sectioning off parts of it versus just a straight on. Like in Canada, for example, Sportsnet and TSN, like Sportsnet's considered the main provider, but TSN still shows a ton of playoff games. They still show a ton of regular season games. They have a ton of local contracts. I think they'd probably prefer to do that. I think the more places that they can get out there for viewers, the better. Especially with Seattle coming on board next year, I think they're going to be really pushing for fans as a whole.
I can't wait for those late games there.
Yeah,
it's going to be insane.
Yeah, and we got another comment right here from Ed saying that what pains me is he won't be watching the Winter Classic in the next 2 days.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be weird. That's definitely going to be something weird right there. And another funny comment from Sean right here. I'm just glad that Nate Thompson got locked up in Winnipeg. It's just like one of those Flyers fans, like, okay, he comes to the team, he plays the bottom minutes, and now everyone hates him.
Yep.
He was just one of those players. Now, okay, everyone hates him. It's just one of those things. Oh, my God. And we also got a final comment right here from Sean saying Happy New Year to us. And just me, Tyson, and yes, even you, Chris. Hashtag Temple's finest. And you also, Chris, I guess we didn't ever mention this on the podcast, but you did get accepted into Temple. So
I did, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're going to be the next big thing on campus.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting. I'm going to be the guy with the walking camera.
You got to take in my footsteps, okay?
Yeah.
I graduated from Temple this past year. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, it is my turn. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is going to do it for this episode right here of the Fired Up Podcast. Thank you to everyone who joined the live stream right now, and for people that weren't able to tune in here. It's always going to be on every podcast platform, wherever you listen to, Apple, Spotify. It will be on those. Talk some nice things, Flyers schedule, World Juniors, and some other NHL news, signings, whatever. There was just so much things to talk about today, and there's definitely going to be a lot of things to talk about as we get closer and closer towards the start of the regular season, which is on January 13th. That's not that long away.
14 days.
2 days away from 2021 and 14 days away from the start of the NHL season. It's really exciting. It's really exciting. And any last remarks from both you, Tyson, and Chris before we end this episode off?
I don't know. I mean, I just hope everybody has a happy new year. I know this year kind of did stink with everything going on from COVID and just everything in general. But again, I hope all you guys had a happy new year. Me and Amadeo and Tyson, we do appreciate you guys, sticking with us through, everything through the playoffs, the end of the regular season, and things like that. And we are really excited for 2020. So happy new year. And thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, I just echo that. Just excited for the season, and thanks for being with us throughout this. I'm new to this podcast, but it's been a great journey so far. So to keep going as a actual live season takes place, we actually have tangible things to be reacting and talking about. So
live things to talk about.
Live things.
Yes,
live.
And we're happy to have you aboard here, Tyson. We're happy to be a part of the Painted Lines going into the new year. It's going to be very, very fun indeed. On the Painted Lines, we're going to be live streaming every single Flyers game, home and road. So don't forget to stay tuned for that. Don't forget to stay tuned for the Fired Up Podcast, always live streaming here on the Painted Lines, always on TTP Sports and Flyers Fan Mania 93. Don't forget to check out those two channels as well for all of your Flyers updates, and also for Philadelphia sports updates as well. Same thing here with the Painted Lines. So that's going to do it here for this episode in edition of the Fired Up Podcast. We all hope you guys have a wonderful New Year, spending time with family whenever or however you're going to do it. Just enjoy your time and enjoy your ride into 2021. We all hope it's going to be fantastic. So thank you for watching this live stream of the Fired Up Podcast. It will be on other platforms after the day is done. So thank you for listening. I'm your host, Amadeo Gracia. He is Chris Mayer, and he is Tyson Quibel. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time, and Happy New Year.